Okay, guys, today we are starting a new modules now. 4 of them, so covering the strings and the namespace. Right? In the end of this, you guys should be able to do all of those things that is mentioned here. Right? So first of all, what I'm going to start is by defining what is the strings. Right? A string is just a collection of characters. That is the strings. Because remember, so far we have been working with numbers. Most of your code that you write was more with numbers, except when you guys reached the point where you were dealing with structures. Only structures where you guys dealt with some strings character, with char, you can load some names and so on. That is the only point, the only place where you guys you deal with some strings so far. This is what you guys did. So the remaining was more about numbers, floats, and so on, right? That's why I say now we are trying to get older now. So programming is getting like, we are getting older now. Now we are going to introduce the use of strings as well. So, like I said, strings is only a collection of characters. And then we are having programming, we have 2 types of strings. Right? What we call a object of a strings, and then what we call a C-strings. It's simply a C-style strings, right? So there's a difference between both of them. And I'll try to go through it during today. First of all, I'm starting with a C-strings. What is a C-strings? In the C-strings, it's just a collection of characters stored in the form of arrays. This is what we call a C-strings. That's how this is how we define it. What does it mean normally? We all remember that when you are dealing with something like this, you are already in the string, you are in the array format, right? This is how we define our array, right? Because in the C-strings, this is our string characters. This is our string characters, right? This is what we call strings. This is our string characters. So, this is a char value, this is a string array, this is a variable that you create. It's going to store this string variable that we declare inside, right? That's why we say it's a C-string. It's a collection of data stored in the form of array, right? This is what's happened because you can define it this way, this is how to define it, or you can define it also this way. Those are the possibilities that you may deal with. This is kind of the example for you to understand. In this example here, I declare my C-strings variable, right? And then I declare the length of my array is supposed to contain 100 characters, right? And then from here, I ask the user to enter the string value, enter the strings, and then I store what the user is going to enter, let's say the characters. I store it instead of this variable that I declare here, str, my array, right? And then from here, I'm going to, you enter this I'm going first to print out what the user enter, and then cout enter another strings, right? Still, when you enter that other strings, I'm going to store it again in the same array, right? And then I'm going to print it again. This is what it means. It's just kind of a declaration. And then I go to the objects. The difference between both of them is like in the string array is defined in the form of array, right? In the string, C-strings is defined in the form of array, right? In the string object is holding a string variable. I mean, like create a string object for holding strings. Like now you are having a data type that's called strings, right? You remember some of you deal with some example where they say string, wherever, right? In the previous one, this variable, you declare it as an array, right? And then now, the string object of the string, this is how you declare it. You introduce the string variable here, the string data type, right? That's the difference between both of them. I skipped. You need to understand this board. So, as you can see in this small example, I declare my string object, which is this one, ask the user to enter the value, and then here I store the value that the user enter into my object, into my string object, and then here I print it out, right? Okay. Now I'll be moving to the substrings, right? We all okay with the strings, right? So, a substrings is simply what we call, remember I told you we are having two different types of function, library function and which one? User-defined function. You guys remember, right? A substring is one of the library function into the string library, right? There are so many of the library function, of the string library function that you may find. There are so many of them. So you guys may do some research, and then like I told you during the week, some of you use string compare library, so on, and then some of you string char and so on. Those are just library function inside of a string library, right? This is what's happened here. This one also is one of them. And then these are kind of, I may say, these are kind of the rules. When you are dealing with a substring, you need to respect it. Otherwise, you are going to have errors. Are we all fine? So, one of them is the index of the first character is 0, not 1, right? What does it mean? I will explain to you when I'll go to the example. This is an example. And then if post equal to strings values, string length, the function return an empty strings, right? If post is greater than the string length, it's thrown out of range. If this happens, there are no changes in the strings. If for the request substring length is greater than size of strings, then return substrings is post and size. And now I'll come back here. This second part says this function takes two values, post and length, as argument and return a newly. I'm just going to stop here. It takes two arguments. All of us, we know already when you are talking about arguments, right? Those parameters inside of the function, right? The substring two parameters, the post and the length. The post, what they say post, it just mean they're just abbreviating what is called a position, right? A position, and then this one length is just simply to say the length of characters that you want to print out, right? Okay. This is one of the examples of the substrings. Remember, I told you it always takes two parameters, the post and the length, right? So first of all, you need to declare your string variable, right? Like in this case, I declare this string variable. How many characters do we have here? 5. Okay. So remember, the first one standing for the position where you need to suppose to start, right? And the second one, the length. If I try to compile this code here, what am I going to have as a result? It's going to start from the second position here. That means it's going to eliminate the first one, the second one. My answer should be, and then I need 4 characters, right? My answer will start from the third one, right? Third one, and the fourth one, and the last one, right? Did you guys get it? No. Okay, let me try to do this. I'm going to change the position to 1. And then change my length to 3. I told you this one is the position. It's like dealing with a cursor. You need to tell him where you want it to start. Right? And then this one, you are telling him how many characters do you want as an output. If I put it to 2, I'm only going to have 2 characters. Right? Is it okay? So this is how the substrings work.
So these numbers, they start at 0.
Yeah. Like it say also, if I go back here, this is what it say. The index of the first character is 0, not a 1. Right? So these are, I can call it the guideline for you to always know what to do. If you didn't respect one of them, you're still going to have an error at the end. So this is what happened normally. Appending. In appending, what should we mean in appending, like in real life, is just simply to add something to the end of a written document, like to add something, still the same with programming, right? It's like you want to combine those two. Maybe I have Hello, and then I have programming C, right? In the end, I want those two to be matched together, like say Hello, programming C, right? This is what happens in appending normally. In this kind of example here, we all know this one is the function, user-defined function, right? So I have my first string with which one I write, the one that I write hello world, right? My second string is this one here, right? And then I'm going to print out first original strings, the one of this variable here. This string object, right? Yes. I don't know anymore where am I. Yeah. I'm going to print out, that means in this line, I'm going to print out hello world, right? And then what should happen next? What is happening here? I'm calling this function for you to append, right? Because this one is saying that Because in this function here, I have two parameters that I have to pass, two arguments, right? That's why I'm passing those two arguments. When I come here, I say string1 dot append string2. That means it's going to start first by printing this one here, the first strings, and then add the second strings, right? So when you go out, see out using appending, that's me appending, and then it's going to print out now the value. You'll find that your value should be hello world, and then this one also coming after. You want me to write it, but I didn't write it. Okay, let me try to make a plan for you guys. Okay. There we go. This is our line of code, right? This is what was written there. If I try to run it, like I said to you, if you print it out, it will start with the first one and the second one. Let me try to swap it around. A mistake here. See what is happening, right? Yeah.
The main function only shows you what should be printed out.
This is what is happening. I'm not printing out in my main function normally. If you see, in my main function, my result is coming, I'm printing it, I'm busy printing it out from this function, user-defined function, append demo, right? This is where I'm busy printing this value, this result here. In my main function, I'm just printing original strings because, see, this is what is here in my main function. Remember, I told you guys, we're having 4 ways to define your user function, right? Depend how you want to play around with it. We have four ways to define it. Is it sharp? Now we're moving to a namespace. I know we have been already encountered some namespace where we declare using namespace std, right? All of us we meet it somewhere. Since we started programming, since application, is it application one? Computing application, right? So we have an idea of the namespace, right? What is the namespace? It's just a container for identifiers. What is happening is like you are trying to group together some function or some names together to avoid collision or to avoid conflicts of names, right? Because when you using namespace STD that stands for standard words. Standard library for C++, right? So that's mean all the function when you use the cout, and then some of you see that if you didn't using namespace std, you need to add before std, and there's those two. If you didn't put it, that means you are going to have an error, right? Because they try to group it together. They try to create a namespace. They group some function together, some names together to avoid some collision, some conflicts with name. Remember in programming, like I told you guys in function, if two functions are having the same names, your compiler is going to complain, right? He's going to complain. He's not going to know which one are you asking him to deal with, right? This is where the idea of namespace pop up. Because if I am having in this class two people with the same sign names, if I call that sign names, both of you are going to respond, right? So I need to make a difference between both of you to let you know that I'm calling this one, not this one. This is what's come up with a namespace. That's why you see, this is what I write here. It's designed to overcome this difficulty and is used to additional information to differentiate similar functions, classes, variable, and so on, right? The purpose of namespace. I'm having kind of 6 of them. I think it's 5, yeah, 5 of them, but it's not too long that you guys can memorize. First of all, it is to avoid a name collision, like I said to you, right? And then the second thing, modularize the application, right? Anonymous namespace and work around of the anonymous issues. Hiding details by convention, right? Because when you declare so on, I think in the next module or after next module, when we'll be dealing with classes, that in your namespace, you may declare them in the same C file or in the same source file, or you can create again another file as well. Or you can create a header file where you declare all your names, you're just going to include it inside. Like remember when you say using std, using namespace std, it's already declared somewhere. They use this method here to hide detail by convention, to hide everything that is written there. You are not going to repeat it again. That is the main rules in programming. All programmers are lazy to repeat themselves twice. So this is how to create a namespace. For you to create a namespace, you need to put a name, start with writing namespace, and then put a name of your namespace, right? And then this one will be a declaration that you want to put inside, and then so on, right? That is the formula. You guys should remember it by now. And then I have some few rules to give you when you are declaring a namespace as well. the namespace definition must be done at a global scope, or nested inside another namespace. What does it mean? Remember, I told you we're having two kinds of declaration, right? A global one and local. If you declare it in the local, that's what does it mean? Only that function is allowed to use it, right? If you declare it in the global, that means all the portion of your codes, you can use it, right? This is what they mean, they meant there. Namespace definition doesn't terminate with a semicolon, like a class definition. If you see in my formula here, I don't have a semicolons, right? You cannot create an instance of a namespace, right? There can be a namespace to a namespace is unique for each translation unit. What does it mean? You can use this kind of statement, but that's make sure that you don't have another namespace. But it's not a proper programming way to do. I'm just showing you guys because some of you may find it in the work environment as well. See someone declared something like this and then so on. But it's not a proper programming way to program. So you should always give your namespace name. And I'll consider that. If you didn't put a name, that means for me is a 0 because I have to teach you guys the proper way. And then the namespace can be continued and extended over multiple files. They are not redefined or overriding. What does it mean? Remember, I told you you can declare your namespace in a different file as well, right? Like in this case here, they declare it in another file, and they name that file header1.h, right? And then this is what is inside of that header1.h. And then this one here is another file as well. But instead of this file, they include this file inside, right? They include it inside because this one needs to know it. And then from this file, they're going to use that namespace, right? I think we'll do some exercise regarding that tomorrow. Because that will be also important for you to capture with classes. Using namespace, we are having 3 ways to use a namespace in programming. For scope resolution, they're using this directive, and they're using declaration. What does it mean? When we say scope declaration, scope resolution, you remember this, right? When you guys were dealing with STD, those two, resolution and then so on, right? So that's me, in this case, you are going to put the name of your namespace and then which one are you going to access, right? Because in my example here, I'm dealing with a classes. I created 2 classes, class A and class B, and then I want to access this one here, right? I'm going to put the name of the namespace that I want to access. And here I specify which class that I want to get in, and then which variable that I want to load in, right? It's a long way, but you guys didn't reach the classes yet. It's on the next one. I want you just to understand it. Because when we say a scope resolution, this is what we mean. Using those two dots that's happening there, right? And then the other way is by using directive. What we mean is, remember we always do it when we are dealing with using namespace std, right? This is what we mean. You can declare it on top, and then inside just say using namespace std or using namespace x, like this one. So that means you can just use those variables inside without you putting those or mentioning the name of the namespace, right? And then the other one is using declaration. What is happening here is, remember, this is here, you use direct, and then using declaration is just you telling him, yeah, forget. It's just simply you are importing one specific names of that specific class, of that specific namespace, right? And then it's time which is available only inside of the current scope. Like you are taking just one variable per time, right? And then let me try to make it a bit practical to help you guys to understand namespace properly. I think this one, yeah. Like in this case here, if I try to run my codes, I'm going to have an error, right? Simply because I repeat those two variables. Although I change the data type, it's still going to consider it as an X and Y. Is it okay? Is it sharp? So if I run it, I should normally expect an error that is going to pop up. And then if I go up, try to read what is the reason. See what it's saying. Right? It's busy complaining. How am I going to overcome it? By creating what we call a namespace, right? So this is even one of the reasons why I say we need to avoid collision and so on. So I'm going to take all of those variables here, put it inside of the namespace. Right? Here I declare my two namespace, right? And then I put those two variables. Is it okay? Do you know why is it complaining? Do you have an idea? Why is it complaining? No. Okay, let me try to do this. What am I going to print out if I do this? Why is it giving me only the value of this second variable? Which kind of method did I use here? Scope resolution, right? So, because if you go back to my namespace, this is what is happening here, right? The name of my namespace is second, right? If I change it, that means I have to change it also that side, right? It's okay. So for me to print out this one, I can use either the same method or I can use the second one, right? Or I can use this method. What does it call? What is the name of it? You still remember? Lost it already. I can see use this method here. And then you see if I use it, my X and Y is not going to complain. If I try to comment it and then run it, it's going to complain about X and Y. Because it doesn't know about it. See what it's saying. Did you guys get it? So that means I need to either use this method here if I use this method, it's going to give out the value. And then if I go back, looking up to my namespace, see I'm still having the same value that I loaded inside. Is it clear now? And I think I'm done for the day.